Great. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Jesse Langley, and I am based in the United States, and I have the privilege and honor to introduce David Comfort. I've known David for several years now, and he is going to share some wisdom and thoughts about his experience. He started several businesses in Costa Rica, and so we're just going to have a very interactive conversation. And if any of you have any questions along the way, please go ahead and enter them in the chat. I've already got a few questions teed up for David, but if there's anything else that comes to mind along this webinar, please feel free to enter it. So with that all being said, excited that you could join us and want to introduce David. And David, do you mind sharing a little bit more of your background and some of the businesses that you've started in Costa Rica?
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. And yeah, my background, at least in the United States, my businesses, I worked on Wall Street for 10 years, and then I worked in real estate development in New York City for approximately 10 years. And we moved to Costa Rica in February of 2020. The property that we have here, we had bought in 2016, and we'd been coming for very frequently over a number of years before we actually moved here. But you know, I love creating things. I like being an entrepreneur, and so it felt familiar and comfortable to start businesses in areas that I had experience, but also to start something where I had absolutely no experience. So the three businesses that we've created. One is RISE, which is a real estate development project, which fit naturally into my background in development. That includes residences, a co-working studio, retreat, school, all the components for a thriving entrepreneurial community. Another one of those businesses is called Kinkara, and that is a hospitality business, a retreat center that we also have on the property. And the third is something that I had absolutely zero experience in, and that is Kombucha Culture. And that is obviously a beverage business that we was sort of like a side hobby. And then I got much more intentional about it. And now it is sold nationwide here in Costa Rica. And we are about to start selling into the United States market, into California. So those are the three very, separate types of businesses that we created here, and just been a lot of learnings over our time here on how to navigate these businesses environment.
That's great. Yeah, definitely separate entities there. So given that, like, who should start a business in Costa Rica? How does that kind of come together? Because for you, those are all different industries and lanes. So it's more of a personality or a type of dynamic. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, starting your own business I mean, it sounds super glamorous, but a lot of businesses fail. I think something like 80% of small businesses in the United States end up failing. And so it may not be for everybody. And I can just tell you, in my experience, like it takes persistence, it takes confidence, it takes resilience, it takes adaptability, and something I also call like holding paradox. And what I mean by that is seeing and feeling and knowing the full vision of the company and where you want to take it, and believing wholeheartedly in that, while simultaneously holding what can sometimes be very stressful and anxious moments in the business. And that's not something that you can just lay on your team members, employees, and a lot of times you'll end up holding that yourself. And so if there's not like a stability or groundedness in that, it can be overwhelming for some. But I find that when you're really passionate about something or excited about it, it gives you like the strength and the energy to get through those tough times, and to navigate using those skills and talents that you have. Yeah.
That makes sense. So I agree. Those are all attributes needed to start a business. Are there any that are uniquely defined for Costa Rica, or maybe that are more specific to Costa Rica, would you say?
I mean, I think it is broadly across, wherever you start that business. But This is actually a word that comes up a lot for me, not just in business, is curiosity. And when I encounter something here in Costa Rica that might be different for how I would encounter it in the United States, like I immediately ask why, and I like to get curious about it, because that sort of sets a sequence in motion of possibly doing something differently than they're used to here, identifying more opportunity in that challenge. And so I think that's just a natural thing that goes with being in business and starting your own businesses, is that curiosity, and it plays out well here, because I don't like to just accept the default answer. I think that details need to be verified, and sometimes in verifying those details, you uncover opportunity.
Right. So curiosity sounds like a source of inspiration for you, right? In starting businesses, are there any other kind of sources of inspiration that you find that have led you down the path in Costa Rica?
Yeah, this is what I would suggest for people that are on this call that are coming here now. I sort of did this, but not really. I do it in parts of my business, and the thing that I would say is, you know, instead of starting something absolutely brand new, like find something here that you can improve upon. And so coming from the United States, I consider that to be like a hyper competitive market. Like you need to hit on, almost everything in order to succeed. But this market is not hyper competitive. And because it's not hyper competitive, it has not become very efficient. And so when I look around and just interact on a daily basis, coming from an environment like the United States where there is all this competition, I feel like you have this lens where you see opportunity everywhere. That could be done better. That could be done better. Done better, done differently, And I think that in the US, we're just exposed to that on a daily basis. And so you see what it takes to succeed in a hyper competitive environment. And whether you realize it or not, you're picking up knowledge and information and wisdom that, when applied down here, can allow you to have success in a relatively short amount of time, versus what it might take in the United States. So the sources for me of information are just going about like my life, what I feel passionate about, and what you feel and see can be improved, because there's a lot of opportunity to improve on the way some businesses are run here. And that's the easiest way, in my mind, to get a successful business going here in a short amount of time.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, given that you've had the opportunity to start several businesses and you've been curious and you've seen a lot of things, is there anything that you're seeing locally in Costa Rica that are greater business opportunities, or potentially lacking within the economy, that someone could dive a little bit deeper in?
I think part of that depends on the region of where you're going. Like we're in the Valley of Perez de la Dawn. We're not on the coast, which is a more tourist focused environment. We're in a valley that is the second fastest growing city in the country. Economically, it's on this amazing trajectory. So there's opportunities that are focused not only maybe a little bit in tourism, but also just in the general population. So for me, like when I think about specifics, I think of like convenience. Like you think about like the 10 years ago or 15 years ago, there wasn't Amazon Prime, and now there is. And what does Amazon Prime offer? It offers convenience, and people pay for convenience. And so in this country, there are a lot of things that have not evolved yet to the most convenient way of delivering that. And I actually, just in the few years that I've been here, I have seen businesses start to evolve that way. Like an example of the ferreterias, the hardware stores. You used to have to see like 4 people to buy something in a hardware store. It's crazy. You go over here, he helps you pick something out. You go over here, he rings you up. Go over there, different person to pay. Go over here, he unpacks everything that you bought to look at it. This person packs it up. You couldn't just like go in and buy something and walk out. Like, I mean, that's an example of like efficiency that feels absolutely normal to us when we're in a Home Depot, but was not the norm at every hardware store. More recently, there's a store that came in here, Colono, now feels very much like a Home Depot. So convenience is one area where I think you can apply that to so many different businesses and see opportunity there. And then other things like efficiency, service level, those are other business attributes that you can look around here and see opportunity. I think people, in our valley, I used, for instance, a car wash as an example. Like, we all take for granted in the US, you pull right in, you can have a car wash in, I don't know, 7-10 minutes, or maybe you go into the nice place and you're in and out in a half an hour. In a place where, there's a fair amount of dirt roads and rain and people need to get their car washed, I can't find a place that takes less than an hour. And normally it's more like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Like, that seems crazy to me. Like, and, so that's just like a simple, like when I think of like a cash flowing type of business, that would be something I would enter in this valley. In that same vein, I talk sometimes about like self-storage. You have expats moving here, they bring more stuff than they need. Homes tend to be smaller here, but they don't want to give it away, they don't want to sell it, they want to store it. And having climate controlled self-storage is another, in my mind, business opportunity for this valley. So those are like, I mean, I have a list a mile long of other ones. It could be landscaping. Like, there's another, I mean, I know these sound really basic, but everything grows in Costa Rica, like exponentially. You don't have to recreate that business. You could come down here with the electric equipment that is now readily available in the US, because, you won't have all that noise that is often around here. So these are just a sample of business opportunities that I see. And if operating is not really your thing, to me, at least in our valley, like building rental real estate, like is a no-brainer around here, at least in the Santa Elena region. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it sounds like, first you kind of got to decide on your region, right? Your region takes you down one path, and then also who your customer segment is it a tourism-based business, or is it a resident-based business? Is there anything that you're seeing around, either of those lanes, be it tourism or, permanent residence? Because you have businesses in both lanes, right? That kind of some cross over. Is there anything that you're seeing outside of convenience, maybe, that is a driving factor for either of those lanes?
So I don't I don't know if I wouldn't necessarily speak specifically to those lanes, but about a driving like factor to be effective. I would think, I'm thinking of a friend of mine, Eben. He said, people buy specific solutions to specific needs. They don't like general solutions, right? And so that when I would think about where to choose in each region, I would be thinking along those lines. Like, what they want to know, they want to find this specific solution to their specific need, and they want to know that your business will provide the result that they want, and they want to definitely know that they get it, that they're going to get it. And so what that comes back to me is like brand and brand marketing, and being really clear and hyper focused and on what it is that your business is offering, whichever one of those lanes that you're going into. And I remember Evan spoke about, I'm old enough to remember when FedEx, which used to be called Federal Express, first started business in the 80s. And how they branded that business was very direct, very clear, very focused. They don't do that anymore because they're not a startup. But back then, the slogan was, when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. There is zero ambiguity about what you are getting from that business, and very clearly they're saying, they're staking their reputation on, this is what we're going to deliver for you. And I just remember thinking about that all the time. And when I just even think about our business, like RISE as a residential community, like, we're not just a residential community, we are a family focused community. Like, the more that we narrow down in any one of these segments that you choose, you may feel like you're narrowing your audience, but you're actually amplifying the attractiveness to the audience that would be interested in what you're selling. You're just super duper clear. Kinkara is another one. We focus on group retreats, pretty much exclusively. So, and then Kombucha Culture, we have a health. When we started, we didn't have brand, and so we had to tell people, what are you going to get? And so our selling line was soda sucks, drink kombucha, and the branding was refreshment ... with benefits, because that's what we were delivering, refreshment with benefits. And so just getting really clear in whatever lane that you're choosing. Yeah.
Right. So you've highlighted a few kind of advantages of starting business in Costa Rica, just because there seem to be more abundant opportunities of looking at things just with a curious lens. Are there some challenges that you've run into specifically in Costa Rica and starting a business?
Yes, and I think
maybe,
like
you have challenges across the board in starting business. I guess, is there ones that are more specific to Costa Rica that you see in your experience?
Yeah, it's hard to, this is a delicate one, because it's part of what also makes Costa Rica so beautiful and the people so beautiful. I feel like the culture here has more sensitive, caring individuals, human beings. And so as you're building out an organization, and particularly if you're doing it in a style from a hyper competitive country, there may be a little insensitivity, that at least that I may be displaying, like, and seeing how that impacts the team. And so I wouldn't necessarily classify that as a challenge. It's a learning and an understanding, and also a way to actually receive from being in Costa Rica. You can relax a little bit. You don't have to be so hyper competitive. And so understanding the culture, and then setting the culture within your company properly, in communicating that, I think was something that I wasn't as prepared for. I thought, like, work, hyper, action, self-starter, that kind of thing. And so I didn't encounter that as much here. But on the flip side, you're getting like a really good human element that's really beautiful. As far as like regulatory, this country has like some socialist policies that you just need to be aware of. And so I think that all of the elements that feel new or unfamiliar, it's just an awareness thing. Once you know what they are, then you can move with them, move against them if you need to, or if anything like that comes up. But you can adapt is what I'm really saying. And so just having awareness is the first step towards navigating anything that seems unfamiliar here. And there will be challenges, but the benefits to me, you have less competition here by far. You have a lower barrier that you need to achieve in order to achieve your financial goals. You just don't need to make that much money to live a absolutely wonderful life here. You don't have to build $1 million business. You build a business that's making you 50, 70 grand a year, you're golden, so that's another thing. And I find you need less capital. Everything's less expensive here. So what that means to me is your resources go further, And so you have more leverage in your opportunity because you can do more with less. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear, just the openness of the culture and not coming in with a certain expectation, right? Really being eyes wide open and making sure that
Yeah.
you're addressing it in such a way. So one of the questions from one of the participants is kind of lends into this on the legality side. You know, in creating a business in Costa Rica, can you legally work on it as a non-working resident? There's been some
Yes.
conflicting kind of feedback. So if you could dive
Yeah.
into.
That's a great question. As the business owner, you can create a business and work in it. There's nothing that prohibits you from doing that. In fact, even if you're here, I'd suggest before you get residency anyway, um, opening a business, because it gives you access to the whole banking system in a much easier way. So there's nothing that prevents you from opening your business here and working in it. You can hire ticos, which are Costa Ricans, and you can also hire foreigners if you need to as contractors or consultants, things like that. So there's nothing that prevents you from doing that.
Okay, great. So on that note, a little bit more, you know, how challenging is it to start a business if you don't speak Spanish? Is that a prerequisite and kind of being able to navigate the path and journey?
So I did, obviously my Spanish is not that great. And so it has not been a challenge for me. I think, would I like to be perfectly bilingual? Yes. I think that part of the impediment of me getting there is the fact that most of our team are bilingual. Like most of the people that we hire or work here are bilingual. So you have access to English speaking Costa Ricans. And so particularly in the valley where we're located, the largest demographic here is age 20 to 29. And typically they would need to go to San Jose to find really good employment. And so, but their families are here. So and they speak English. So if you can create a business here or nearby where they can stay with their families, near their families, you'll have a team member for a very long time. And that's fantastic because, it's less training, it's more expertise building up within your organization, more upward mobility. Yeah, it's there's a wealth of talent, at least in this area. To draw from, and not speaking Spanish has not been an impediment for me. Obviously, it depends a little bit on what business you're going into, but it has not been a problem.
Great. Well, that's awesome to have that ability to come into a country and not feel so confined by that. So switching gears a little bit and a little bit more towards your knowledge and development and construction, what are construction costs like in Costa Rica and Costa Rica compared to, let's say, New York or Toronto? Can you give a little bit of a color on that?
Yeah, they're way less here, and it also depends on where you are in Costa Rica. To build on the coast is rather expensive in Costa Rica, just because you don't have all the raw materials and things that you need already on the coast. They need to travel from inland. So you might have 30, 40, 50% difference in the cost to build based on what region that you're in. We happen to be in an area that is a lower cost to build, just because there's infrastructure nearby and concrete facilities and things like that to support construction. If you're asking for like a specific number, if you're in square feet, I guide people for in our region to about $100 to $120 per square foot. I think on the coast you'd be more 150 to maybe as high as 190, 200. But you can build if you're very value conscious for under 100. We have a home that is under construction in our community now for under $100 a foot. That's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath home with an office. And so construction costs are materially lower. They were even better a year ago when the exchange rate was a little better, but yeah, at least in our valley, construction costs are low.
Gotcha. What about in the cities like in San Jose? What's the construction cost looking there? Any idea?
So the truth is, I don't know about San Jose. San Jose is not a city that I spend a lot of time in. It tends to have a lot of traffic, and it's not why I moved to Costa Rica. Like I moved to feel completely immersed in nature, but have an urban center 20 minutes away. To have, there's waterfalls on our property, just to be surrounded by toucans and hummingbirds and mountains and like all of the things that for me uh, make living in a more balanced way possible. And that was really one element for why I wanted to move here, is just having a work-life balance that feels more appropriate to the goals that and vision that I have for my own life and that of my family.
Right. So kind of in the same vein of construction and prior to construction, one of the questions from our participants is wanting to understand a little bit more of the challenges around the planning and municipal approvals. Are there challenges around that, or what does that process look like?
So we've gone through a fair amount of approvals and permits, whether it's with Dirección de Agua, Satana, the municipality, Menai, SENAC, like every agency. And I have not found that to be super difficult, with the exception of one agency called Satana, which is the environmental resolution, where you would go to get your environmental resolution to do a large project. That took us, a year and a half to get, and then the second one I think took 2 years. My understanding, though, is with the new president that has actually gotten materially better, and our most recent interactions with Satana kind of bore this out. Like we got responses and approvals for lesser things in like a month. So permits have not been a problem for us at all. And in many instances with our project, because it's big, we invite those agencies to come out and we show them exactly what we're doing, so that they know in advance. I find that with a lot of these government agencies, they just don't want to be caught unaware. And so what they don't want is a phone call from some residents saying, do you know what's going on out over here? And they freeze up and go, no, oh my God, I don't, So if you bring them out there and show them what you're going to do, and they're aware of it, they feel just a lot more at home. So we've not had any challenges on that front. You know, I'd say if there are, like, I'm thinking of one permit that took a little longer. The challenge is not necessarily with the agency, it's with the consultant, and finding, maybe he filled out the form wrong or left out some information, things like that. And, can't really blame the agency for that. It's on our own, vetting process for hiring a consultant. Yeah.
Right. Gotcha. So on hiring a consultant and labor, do you find it difficult to attain skilled labor in the country?
So let's see. We have not found in the industries that we've entered. Now, I would say that there is training, as in any business, is important. And I think that one of the characteristics or traits that you bring coming from a country like the United States is, to me, a level of like precision, excellence, detail focus, professionalism in many different areas. And so you can view that as like a source of frustration if that's not present in who you're looking to hire or who you have hired, or an amazing opportunity to educate and be of service to somebody else, to teach, to mentor. And since you have a lot of the young folks here, like, I was 20 something a long time ago. I made mistakes, but the real thing is the thirst for knowledge, like making a mistake, owning up to it, learning from it, and then hopefully not repeating it. And so I don't have any problem with somebody not, with someone making a mistake as long as it's not repeated over and over. And so we haven't had a real challenge in finding skilled labor and then really up leveling them across the board. And that feels really amazing because even if they do end up leaving, you've had like made a huge difference in their life. I'm thinking about, we have a wood shop on site, and there's a guy named Hal Taylor who makes like the greatest rocking chair in the world. He sells it for $6,000 to $10,000 a chair, and he came down here for free, stayed here with a month for us, and taught all 6 of the carpenters and woodworkers in our shop how to make this exquisite chair. And most recently, Jairo just made one of those chairs for the president of Costa Rica.
Wow.
And they don't need, none of them work for us anymore because they all moved on to like amazing, like other opportunities. But this was a gift that Hal bestowed on them. And I'm just so grateful. Like, and when they do move on and they move up, like you're happy for them. And I just think it's amazing that from our little wood shop, the president now sits in a chair that was made by one of our local Costa Ricans here in Petasiladon.
That is pretty special. So, and then it sounds like within your response there that Costa Ricans are very open and wanting to learn, right? That they're wanting to progress and have a growth mindset. Is that what you're basically alluding to?
Yeah, I just think like we have a lot of knowledge to share, and they have much to learn from us as we do from them, in their Pura Vida lifestyle. And so I love share. I mean, even just this web, I love sharing information with people who are learning or yearning for that and want to learn and do things with it. Like that's super fulfilling to me, just on an energetic basis and just a life basis. So inviting people in to be able to share your wisdom with them and is a really amazing opportunity. And there's no shortage of local Costa Ricans here that would love to hear that knowledge. This is a small country, and so sometimes it takes time for new ideas and things to trickle down here. And so that if they could hear that, I've found them to be very receptive and to offer feedback as well in a positive way. Yeah.
Right. We all have something to learn from each other, right? Like no one's coming to the table with everything. We all, as you mentioned earlier, there's a lot to be learned from Ticos and just their connection and willing to embrace and feelings around it all, as well as many other areas. So a little bit more to a legal question here. So if you have an LLC in the US, do you have to establish a new LLC in Costa Rica, or can you stay under that one that you already have? Talk a little bit about how corporate structure.
So yeah, let's talk about structures. So in Costa Rica, there's 2 types of business structures. There's an SA, S.A, Sociedad Anónima, and there's my Spanish, and then an SRL. And the SRL is the equivalent of an LLC in the United States, and an SA is the equivalent of a corporation in the United States. So there are some differences structurally around them, and one of the biggest being, if you're a U.S. resident, is that the SA is a closed entity for tax purposes, where the SRL is not. So, for instance, if you have an SRL in Costa Rica and it loses money in its first couple years, you can pass those losses down to your U.S. tax return and to offset any gains. So that could be like a real benefit for you in that regard. In the corporation, it is closed for tax purposes. What happens in Costa Rica stays in Costa Rica. So those are the 2 different types of entities that you would create in Costa Rica for your business. And they typically cost about $1,000 plus or minus to set up, depending on what you want. And you could have, if you have an LLC in the United States, the LLC could be the owner of your Costa Rican corporation. everyone's, and I've done that, and also been the direct owner of Costa Rica, of a SA and an SRL. Depending on your individual situation, like I can't really speak to what would be best for one person's situation, but there's a lot of flexibility. You could just keep your LLC up there, but then you're not going to have access to the banking system down here. And that's what you really want, because then you can pay people electronically through Zelle, through a system just like Zelle. It's called SingPay down here. You can do bank transfers and register, like pay for all kinds of things that are easier to do down here. You can also eventually get a digital signature to sign documents, so you don't have to do the in-person signatures. So yeah, lots of options, and not different. You could have a company set up in a week here, so it's not a challenging thing to do. We have a lawyer that we offer to our community to set that up for people, but you can really choose any lawyer. Yeah.
Great. So in the vein of starting a business, how difficult is it to obtain financing? How does you have some experience on how you've navigated that side of it?
So let's see. If you're going to start your own business here as a foreigner, you're gonna, that capital, like you should assume that you're going to have to come up with all that capital, and it could be, your own personal capital, or raising capital from, U.S. investors. And then you could put that directly into, if you wanted to, an LLC in the U.S., or that money can go right into your Costa Rica corporation. In general, I think that people are more hesitant to invest money with things that they're unfamiliar with. And being an international destination, there's going to be some like lack of familiarity there. But I also believe that there's a lot of money in this world. So if the money is not flowing to you for what you need, the very first place to look is yourself and your plan. And what blockages are you not seeing that would allow people to invest in your business? I've had success in getting investment from the United States, and from individuals, even from in Europe, and I find that a lot of that is related to your plan, your relationship, your own personal integrity, and commitment, responsibility, all the things that why you would invest in any business with somebody. Like, I often see investing in business as investing in that relationship. And no one ever holds a gun to your head and says, you have to invest in this business. If I invest in something and it goes sour, I don't actually blame the person who I invested with. Even when there's fraud, or, they did a terrible job, all of that stuff. From my point of view, I didn't have to make that investment. I did a poor job of analyzing the risks, and that risk might the risk of the individual, the character of the individual, the nature of the business, the demand for that business, all that stuff. Like to me, that's just a level of like personal accountability. Like if it goes wrong, like I made a mistake in assessing the risk reward benefit of that, and live with it and move on. Yeah.
Right. So startup capital, it sounds like, is something that you're going to need to kind of come to the country with, or, bring in sources for that. What about when your businesses kind of gets up and running and established? How does some of the local financing, I know you have some experience with that as well. Talk a little bit about that.
So I'll talk about that mostly as it relates to Kombucha Culture. So like I started Kombucha Culture with like, $15,000, $20,000 initially. And, I had to put some more into it, but over the years, after about 2 years of being in business, of seriously being in business, I started to think, okay, this has legs, like this could go far. It's even beyond my own necessarily expertise. This was in 2020. It was in the middle of COVID. At that time, I hired an investment banker, and within a year, we closed a deal with an amazing family here in Costa Rica that owns 20 or 30 different businesses, probably one of the most commercially successful families in Costa Rica. And so to me, it because the business was having success, and there's some key metrics in there that I think investment bankers are particularly looking for, that let them know that what this business needs, if you give this business cash, it's going to scale and make a lot more money. And so one of those metrics is gross margin. What they're trying to see is like, if I add more fuel to this fire, is it going to exponentially go like this? And Kombucha Culture was set up well for that. And so, yeah, our investment banker was like, he was fantastic. And since it is a small country, like everybody knows everybody who's in the financing world. And so if you're looking to and there's still some businesses that I see out there that I would follow this exact same track if I had the bandwidth, that you could enter and within a couple of years scale, bring in a partner, cash out if you want to, and let them take it, worldwide. Yeah.
Great. So you've seen that model work in Costa Rica just like anywhere else. So it sounds like that the financing is there as long as your product or service has the right path with it, and you've been able to evidence that. So one other question, kind of one of the last questions, and unless there's so many more that come in from the participants here on the call, can you talk a little bit about taxes and how that plays within the business environment, how much they might be or what that percentage looks like?
Yeah, I'll talk about it from a couple of different perspectives because this is a real benefit for moving to Costa Rica. Shockingly, the United States tax code has a really nice benefit in there. It's called the U.S. Foreign Earned Income Tax Credit. And what it means is that for the first $110,000 for an individual or $220,000 for married couples is tax-free. So, and all you have to do is live abroad. You could even actually be living abroad and be a consultant, have a client in the US and getting paid into your US bank account. You would still qualify for that. So this is a huge benefit to not be paying taxes on that income to the United States. As far as like Costa Rica, they have a corporate income tax that is, if you're doing well, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 30%. There's not a lot of great corporate tax breaks in Costa Rica. It's not like, a tax haven or anything like that. It's more that the benefit is on the US side than anything else. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's all the questions I have, as well as the ones that came in through the participants. Are there any kind of closing thoughts that you wanted to share with everyone as wrapping this up?
Let's see. As you could probably pick up from this, I think that for those that want to start a business and desire to live in Costa Rica, there's ample opportunity here. And I think even to start something that you've never done before. And I think that could be really exciting for somebody who's maybe stayed in the same lane like me for a number of years when I was in New York. It's invigorating, it's fun, and the barriers to success are far lower. And so I wouldn't rush it. I would say to come down, do your research, and then find your passion for that business. Like for me, none of these businesses were around purely making money, or not even close. Like they're hyper passionate for me. I feel very purposed in it and fulfilled, and it doesn't even though at times it's really hard work at times, it's still super fulfilling. And so I think it's important to be honest and with yourself about how you feel about entering that business and what your level of commitment is to it, to see things through. And if you are, I just think that the Costa Rica has some really wonderful opportunities here. And if there's any way we can help, ask us questions. Like I said, I actually really enjoy sharing the lessons I've learned from my mistakes, things I've done wrong that I want to pull my hair out about, and the things that have worked really, really well. And I have an equal amount of both. So yeah, I think that's what I would say to anybody who's looking to start.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for sharing all that. And thanks for those of you that have participated on this. This was recorded. So if you wanted to go and listen back to some of the nuggets that David shared, that will be sent out following this webinar. Again, thanks for everyone that signed up for this. And as David mentioned, he's there to help assist and thrive for those that are interested in this community and interested in doing business in Costa Rica. So thank you for attending, and we really appreciate your participation.
Thank you.